What's going on, ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians of all ages, Joker back again, once again. So by now, it should be painfully apparent to anyone and everyone and anybody's second cousins, nieces, nephews, uncles, cousins, ex-roommates, boyfriend from Seattle that I love the lore behind Thorn and Dredgen Yor and The Last Word and Shin Malphur and Jaren Ward and all that nonsense. However, one of the aspects behind the Thorn lore that I was never really a fan of was how it all came to a close. The TLDR for anybody joining us in Destiny with Destiny 2 is, within the world of Destiny, there are these human-hive hybrid weapons, known as the Weapons of Sorrow. Weapons of Sorrow are guardian weapons that were augmented by hive magic. Now, here's where things get a little weird, at least as far as the lore goes. In the lore, there's only 2 Weapons of Sorrow that are actually classified as Weapons of Sorrow, meaning that they're actually called a Weapon of Sorrow within their lore text. Now, as I said before, there are only 2 weapons that are definitively classified as Weapons of Sorrow, Necrochasm and Thorn. But things like Bad Juju, Touch of Malice, and likely even the exotic swords from Destiny 1 are most likely or could be categorized as Weapons of Sorrow. As the only real definition that we have for what makes a Weapon of Sorrow a Weapon of Sorrow is that Weapons of Sorrow are born from the forbidden use of the Hive's dark power. That said, at the end of the day, all Thorn really is, according to the lore, is a really cool hand cannon that had Hive bones welded to its frame. So, a Weapon of Sorrow could just be any weapon that has Hive parts or magic used in its creation with a significant enough tie to the Hive power or to the darkness. But then again, that's a topic for another video. Towards the end of Destiny 1, we were introduced to a Titan named Razil, and his story leading up to him becoming Dredgen Yor. Dun dun dun! Lightning crackle, lightning crackle, lightning crackle. However, there was one small problem. Again, because every video is somebody's first, the story being told up to this point led to the implication that Dredgen Yor was in fact a hunter. Hell, just Google search Dredgen Yor and you'll see a ton of fan art. Hell, when the leading expert on Destiny lore, my name is Bife, commissions one of my favorite comic book artists in the industry, Stjepan Sejic, to draw up the story of Dredgen Yor, Shin Malphur, Razil, Jaren Ward, and everybody's a hunter, you guys know when that kind of money goes into a project that at least these people bothered to dot their I's, cross their T's, underline, and check twice before cutting. But anyways, moving forward, Dredgen Yor being a hunter was just kind of part of the accepted canon of the community. I mean, all the evidence pointed towards it, so why wouldn't it be true? And in a lot of ways, this sort of just made sense. Dredgen Yor being a hunter really fit the story that was being told. I mean, it was this Wild West horror story about family, love, loss, revenge, basically the quintessential hero's journey, as seen in something like Star Wars. It also didn't help that it was a story about 2 guys with hand cannons that really like to gunsling. It also didn't help this misconception that multiple items within Destiny 1 were attributed to Dredgen Yor, and they're also hunter items. And in Destiny 1, Titans in general don't have items that really flirt with the darkness like hunters and warlocks do. There's no symbionts attached to the head, there's no Ahamkara bones for Titans. Titans, by and large, are relatively vanilla, all things considered. All of that said, for the sake of argument, Yor's class was never actually disclosed. It was only through reading between the lines and reading the context clues presented in the game that the community came to this conclusion that Yor was a hunter. So when it was ultimately revealed that no, in fact, he was actually a Titan, people were not happy. People still are not happy. So, as with most things, when your favorite TV show, movie, video game, story, or piece of lore jumps the shark and goes off into left field, people try to figure out exactly what happened. The prevailing theory was kind of a simple one. Rise of Iron wasn't planned. This led to most people making the assumption that, well, the lore written for Rise of Iron's grimoire was written specifically for Rise of Iron, as Destiny 2 should have been the next release in the franchise, not Rise of Iron. And it would be a rather dickish thing to do to use lore created before Destiny 1 was ever released for Destiny 2. So it really wasn't that absurd of a conclusion to come to think that, well, maybe they just brought in a bunch of people to write the grimoire for Rise of Iron, and you know what? Something just got lost in translation, something got retconned, the person who wrote this didn't do enough research, yada yada yada. More so when a good portion of the live streams and interviews talked about how Bungie was creating new lore for Rise of Iron. And given the state of Destiny 2's lore, it was easy to believe that whomever wrote the lore last second didn't care or didn't understand or was just doing what they had to do to get it out on time. And instead of writing a proper story for Dredgen, they wrote, well, Star Wars fanfiction. Well, apparently, that's not actually the case. Jon Goff, writer behind The Last Word, Thorn, Rizil, Azir, and Shadows of Yore cards, contacted me and he had this to say. The Destiny 2 writing team did not change Dredgen's story. Last Word, Thorn, Rizil, Shadows of Yore, etc. It has been written/presented as intended since its creation in 2012-2013. Now, first off, I have to say that I have a ton of respect for this guy. He saw that I was repeating the common misconception about how the story was retconned, and he reached out to me to set the record straight, while also stating basically, hey, if you don't like it, that's cool, but here's how it is. Blame me, not them. And I gotta say, I have a ton of respect for anybody who goes, you know what? Yeah, that was me, that was my bad. You know what? You can like it, you can dislike it, we can agree to disagree. And yeah, you know what? At the end of the day, any fault or any success on that falls on my shoulders. You gotta love that. Not only was he more than willing to engage in the conversation, he was also extremely personable and very passionate about it. Other members of the Destiny writing team or development team in general, or, I don't know, community management? Huh. Yeah. They could all take a few lessons from him and Christopher Barrett. A scathing yet topical rebuke of the communication pipeline between Bungie and the community aside, this was a rather interesting conversation, and I wanted to go ahead and share some of the highlights with you guys. So, once we got past the introductions and niceties of starting a conversation and setting the record straight, I decided to see what information I could ferret out of him. Naturally, of course, my first questions were about the Hunter Cloak and the Hunter Artifact. Example, the cloak exists fictionally. It was sewn, named, and worn by individuals. Does that mean Yor wore it? Maybe. If he did, does that mean he was a hunter? Maybe. If it was his, was it always his? Maybe. Is there other hunters who may have worn it? Maybe. Would Yor's life be one where he finds power in maybes? Seems that way. But with the information in given fragments, flavor, notes, etc., it falls to the reader who chooses to engage in the story to form their own conclusion based on facts presented. That said, there might be a little bit of disinformation going on here, in world, not in the conversation. Because when I stated, you have to kind of admit, it's a little funny that if you Google search Dredgen and you look at the images, it's all hunters. To which he replied, huh, and if they were Titans, a dead man would be angry. Rizil was always part of the plan. I was actually surprised how long people held out allowing themselves to make the connection. Thought I oversold it with some of the repetition in the early Rizil cards. But the mystery persisted, which is always fun. In a follow-up conversation, Jon had this to say. In universe, Yor would be tied to the way he was viewed by the world as a hunter gone bad, as he intended, which is why items connected to him are associated with hunters. A select few, like Zora Arosa and Tebin Gray, piece together Yor's life, but maintain the legend. Now, that's it for the Yor relevant bits of the conversation, and I really do thank Jon for contacting me and setting the record straight and having this conversation. But this got me thinking, man, this was a really great and productive conversation. If only we could get better peeks like this at what's going on behind the scenes when it comes to writing and lore at Bungie. Imagine a world in which random YouTubers didn't have to ask random Destiny writers on the internet, what the fuck's going on with the lore and why doesn't any of it make sense anymore? And hope they get a reply instead of getting blocked. Imagine if there was a venue of some kind in which writers could go, yep, there's inconsistencies being introduced with the next DLC that we're putting forth, but here's why, and here's what it'll affect. Now, for the record, I don't give two shits and a fuck if a Bungie dev blocks me. I actually find it quite amusing as an artist myself, because here's the thing. The best critiques of my work, the ones that made me go, oh shit, do I actually want to keep doing this? Were brutal, they were harsh, they were teardowns. Those were the ones that made me improve. Not the pedantic tiptoeing with slight suggestions here and there veiled behind a mountain of praise and pleasantries. Like Jon Goff said, and like I opened the video with, creative endeavors need to be challenged. Any creator confident in their work accepts/embraces this. So, critique, deconstruct, celebrate, engage in the content you care about. And if it doesn't work for you, challenge it. If it does, share it. So like I said, I don't begrudge it when a Bungie employee blocks me. I don't give two shits or a fuck. What I do begrudge is the piss-poor communication all around, and how isolated and sheltered Bungie as a whole seems to be. Over the last 5 years, developer Digital Extremes, the minds behind the free-to-play game Warframe, has had a bi-weekly developer stream numbering 107 hour-long-ish episodes, and a weekly primetime stream numbering 197 episodes. On top of that, they have fairly comprehensive updates and patch notes that are available in the game. Or look at something like 343 Industries and Halo. Halo, unlike Destiny or Warframe, isn't a live game, so news and updates and features coming to the current iteration of Halo would be rather silly, as it's not applicable once the support for the game has shifted away from the current title to the next one in development. But Halo is an always developing multimedia franchise. 343 Industries produces weekly updates, and starting in 2014, they began releasing a fairly regular monthly or bi-monthly series called Cannon Fodder, in which they go in and break down the lore, talk to the writers, and talk about the newest things being added to continuity. Destiny by nature is a community-driven and community-oriented game. Destiny 1 thrived due in large part to the considerable contributions of communities that formed on Twitch and YouTube around various aspects of the game. How there's not a community branch of Bungie whose entire job is to create and foster what Digital Extremes and 343 Industries have created for Warframe and Halo respectively for Destiny, well, it's insanity. It's mind-boggling. We have a handful of community managers, and what exactly do? They write a blog once a week? They react poorly to controversy well after the fact? I'm by no means belittling their contributions. I imagine that there is a huge PR workload behind the scenes, and that must be enormous for such a large, ever-evolving game. Except Warframe is also expansive, and it's free to play, and it's ever-evolving. And Halo is an ever-evolving franchise with toys, books, comics, and let's not forget, an actual presence in competitive gaming. All I'm saying is, if 343 Industries and Digital Extremes can be this involved in their community, why can't Bungie? But hey, you know what, ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians of all ages, those are just my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below, and like always, stay frosty.
Sejic was this Splicer's next big play. Present a god for all to worship, but control the flow of ether to control the house.
I guess they didn't factor us into the plan.
Any wrench we can throw in their works is a good thing. Guardian, you make one hell of